I was about 10 at the time. I went to visit my dad in New Mexico while my mother lived in Colorado. My dad worked in an oil field until midnight about every weekday, and my stepmother worked at a bar across town. This meant that I had to stay home alone with my two stepbrothers. One was 13 and the other was 7, and stepsister, who was 12, at the house. Our house was a bit out in the open, but still had houses around it here and there. We got home from school and had been there for 3 or 4 hours. My oldest brother, Hunter, and my sister, Jade, were playing Mortal Kombat, and I noticed it was starting to get dark. I always went around making sure that all of the blinds on the windows were closed when it got dark. So I started walking around the house. I closed the blinds in the kitchen and went to the living room, where there was a sliding glass door we never really used, so it was locked all the time. I usually kept the blinds on that one open, since I liked to look out the door while waiting for one of my parents to get home. I went back to my siblings and saw my little brother Caden had gotten our pet snake out and was playing with it next to Hunter, who was still playing video games. I sat beside Caden and watched them play, and waited for my stepmother Marie to get home. About 30 minutes passed, and we decided we were done playing. As we were putting them away, we got a call on the house phone. Jade went and answered it as I continued to help put the games up. She came back a minute later, telling us that Marie wouldn't be there for a while longer, so we sat down on the floor and talked, and eventually started fighting over some stupid topic. I decided to walk away from them, and walked back into the living room and sat on the couch. The way the living room is set up, the couch is parallel to the glass door. I decided to close the blinds since my stepmom was going to be late. I got up and walked over to it. I looked out the door as I was closing the blinds. I saw something that made me freeze. There was a man walking around in our backyard. There was no fence in the back, so that means that he either came from the forest area at the back of our property or that he walked around the house. I closed the blinds quickly and peeked out to see if he saw me. I don't think he did. He was just walking slowly around the house, looking straight forward. He looked to be fairly tall, but still a bit skinny. No one was ever back there, so I knew something was up. I started walking back to my siblings and told them to shut up. They saw that my face had a pretty scared expression and stopped. I looked at my sister. "There's a man outside," I stuttered out. They didn't believe me, of course. They continued to fight. I almost started to cry from fear and frustration, since they didn't believe me. They told me to stop crying and went and looked outside. My sister almost screamed when she looked out of the window and saw the man. She said he was just standing there looking at our front door. Everyone now realized that I was being serious. The first thing we thought to do was run to our rooms, but Hunter protested and said, without trying to sound scared, we should wait in our parents' room for now. Their windows have curtains and he won't be able to see us. We decided that was a good idea, but we should turn off the lights before we do that. I went to the kitchen and turned off the lights. We snuck around the house, making sure that we avoided making noise. Then we heard it. He had opened the large gate in the front and was now in the front yard. I was flipping out, but quickly ran back and met up with Jade and Hunter in the hallway leading to the bedroom. "All right, let's go back to the room." Jade was cut off by the man knocking on the door. We looked at each other in horror as we heard the man yell,
"Hello? Is anyone home?"
His voice was deep and raspy. We started to stumble over to the room when Hunter stopped and ran back. Jade and I looked back confused, and we realized Caden was still in the pet area, still as a statue holding the snake. Hunter took the snake, put it in the habitat, and quickly dragged him to our parents' room. The knocking got louder and the man yelled,
"I'm a friend of your father's. Please open the door."
Even though he said that, I do not think he actually knew we were in there. We hid in the closet of our parents' room. We heard the knocks getting louder. Then all of a sudden it stopped. We looked at each other, waiting to see if anything else would happen. We sat there for what seemed like 10 minutes. Then as we were about to get up, we heard him hitting the door extremely hard. We then realized he was kicking the door in. We heard my birds start to flip out. We were all scared to death. I start thinking that we are in a pretty obvious place, so I thought it would be a good idea for us to move.
"What the hell?"
we hear him say, followed up by a noise which I could only guess was him shaking the bird cage. We heard him knocking things over in the kitchen. I slowly started opening up the closet door. Jade was flipping out when I turned to her and quietly whispered, "Attic in the boys' room." She looked at me like I was insane, but she started thinking about it, and then looked over to Hunter. "Attic," she mumbled. Our attic was a bit different than most houses. My two brothers had a bunk bed, and right above it was the entrance to the attic. Because of this, we made it more like a room than an attic. It had a lamp, pull-out couch, bookshelf, a window, and a place to sit and read. It was basically a second living room made for the kids. We were the only ones to use it, since the way you got in was by lifting up a board and moving it to the side. Anyways, I peered out the door of my parents' room. He was in the dining room. You could tell because we have a few filing cabinets in there, and you could hear him going through every single one. I looked back, and Caden was right behind me. We quickly but quietly ran into their room. I looked over to see if he happened to see me, but he was still looking through the cabinets. We had windows in our rooms, but when they are opening, they make a loud screeching noise. So like I said, we decided to go into the attic. With Caden being the youngest, we helped him up, followed by me. When I got up there, we heard the birds start flipping out again, so we expected he was getting closer. We tried to hurry up, and eventually everyone got in. We quickly closed it and sat there in silence. We looked at each other for a while. About 10 minutes passed, and Caden started crying. We had to cover his mouth to make sure the man didn't hear us. I looked around the room when Jade slowly started crawling to the window, making sure that she didn't make much noise. I put my head down to the ground, trying to hear anything. I could still hear the birds, but I couldn't tell where he was. I slowly got back up and looked at Jade. She was looking out and then slowly started opening up the window. She was waving to someone. I slowly crept over there to see who she was waving at. My dad came home early. He saw us and instantly knew something was wrong. He went back to his truck and grabbed his gun. He worked in a not-so-safe part of town, so he always had a gun with him. He then saw the door was broken down, and he ran into the house.
"Get the fuck down, motherfucker!"
We heard him yell as soon as he walked in.
"Hunter, go call Derek."
We knew we could get down now. We got down as fast as we could, and ran into the living room. My dad had his gun pointed at the man, who was sitting on the ground with his hands behind his head. Derek was one of my dad's friends who happened to be a police officer. We called him and told him everything, and that we needed him down here. We noticed as we were calling Derek, the man looking over at us, but my dad nudged him with the gun, making him look back down. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. I am so thankful that my dad happened to leave work early. If he didn't show up when he did, I don't know if we'd be alive right now. I wish we had reacted in a different way, but at least we are alive. My entire life I have heard, seen, and felt things that others do not. I identify as an empath, and I have had a bit of luck doing psychometry readings from objects and photos. From an early age, I learned to shield myself from things that go bump in the night. As a younger woman, I attended many paranormal investigations and helped many families dealing with the paranormal in their lives. When I began to have children, I left all of that behind to protect them from the things that follow you home. After my second child was stillborn, I let go of a lot of my shields in hopes of connecting with that child on the other side. I got pregnant again fairly quickly and had a difficult pregnancy leading up to a healthy, happy delivery. Unfortunately, the paranormal found its way back into my life through my dreams. Shortly after having my third child, I had a dream that I was standing in my backyard in the pitch black of night, and only the light from a single open door at the rear of my house could be seen. Suddenly, I am yanked by both of my wrists backwards. I'm being dragged on the ground into the house by something I cannot see. I see this creature in my head, but I cannot twist my body to look at it. I hear my own voice in my head screaming, "Get to the baby!" I awoke in real life, in that exact position on the bed, wrists together, arms behind my head, screaming at the top of my lungs. I was absolutely terrified. After a couple of seconds passed, I finally regained my senses enough to run into the nursery just beside my room. And there it was, beside the baby's crib, the shrouded shadow I had felt dragging me in my dream. I reached and grabbed the baby, while reciting a banishing prayer, and then it was gone. I held her for the rest of the night, reciting the Lord's Prayer, until we both fell back to sleep. Fast forward 4 years, and my fourth child has just made his way into the world. An easy pregnancy had led up to a difficult birth experience, and I was staying at my mother's house. In the wee hours of the morning, I began to dream of something in the room with me. Again, I see this shrouded figure, shaped like a human but faceless and black, that had terrified me after my last child was born. It grabs me by my leg and begins yanking me off the bed that my baby and I were sleeping in. In real life, I wake to being dragged off of the bed, my body half on the bed and half on the floor. I am clawing at the comforter and I begin screaming the Lord's Prayer almost involuntarily as I fight to get away from whatever has hold of me. I can't bring myself to even look in that direction because I know what I will see. I just want to get back onto the bed to protect my son. My legs aren't working, they're numb. I'm paralyzed with fear, and finally I finish the prayer, and whatever it is let go of my leg. I clawed my way back onto the bed and held my son, weeping. The next morning I told my mom what happened, and she said she never heard me yelling. I don't see how. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I know from my background researching the paranormal that what probably happened to me was a phenomenon called sleep paralysis. However, A part of me also knows this isn't the first time I've been touched by something I couldn't explain. My name is Edward. I'm a former commissioned security officer who worked in Texas. This happened in July of 2012 at the Lady of Guadalupe Cemetery in Seguin. This recap is from my second year in security. I was working with a partner at a cemetery that had issues with vandals destroying headstones and trying to dig up graves. He and I both had the gift of sensing spirits around us all the time. This day, however, it was stronger and darker than usual. My partner and I arrived about 1800 hours and relieved the day shift officer. Due to the nature of the crime that we were there to deter, we were required to have 2 men at all times during the night. After having been at this site for a month, I got used to what I was sensing at the time. This night, for some reason, it was more intense and darker in nature. I couldn't help but think the spirits here were getting more pissed off by the vandals that we were trying to apprehend. Promptly at 1845, my partner started his rounds while I stood guard at the main gate of the cemetery. At this time, darkness came faster, since we were surrounded by forest. We were both already on edge after seeing the desecration that took place in the cemetery the past couple of months. What made matters worse was the vandals were getting more brazen by disturbing the graves to the point of almost being considered grave robbing. The cemetery isn't huge in size, but it's big enough to take at least a 2-man team to cover it at night. The hardest part is being surrounded by woods, with owls, coyotes, and rattlesnakes around. The smallest sound often shot a chill up your spine and made you really feel like you were being watched. My partner patrolled the northwest side, keeping in radio contact with me, informing me of what he was finding around the area. At one point, we both heard this blood-curdling scream that didn't sound like anything we had ever heard before. He was already making his way back to me, and both of us had our weapons drawn. We both used our flashlights searching the cemetery for a source of what could have let out that god-awful scream. As we continued to search, the air changed. It felt heavier, darker, like something truly unnatural was present not far from us. After about 10 minutes, we both went back to doing our rounds and doing radio checks every 5 minutes. Another 45 minutes pass, and I get a radio call for me to meet my partner on the back side of the cemetery, as he found something he felt I needed to see. When I was approaching his location, the stench in the air was rancid and extremely rank, like the stench of death. As I approached, all I could see was a mound of bones, not like something dug up from a grave, but something rather fresh, as if placed there after a kill within 24 hours. As we both examined the skeleton before us, it dawned on me that it was the remains of a large coyote. Stripped to the bone, fur strewn about, and a lot of blood around, but every inch of this skeleton was clean, not a trace of meat or sinew. Shocked, we both tried to figure out what could possibly do something of this nature to such a large predatory creature. As we both made our way back to the gate to write up a report on what we saw, we got an answer to our question. We heard loud crunching footsteps, very heavy, like someone about 8 foot tall and over 500 pounds. We both frantically kept searching, looking for any sign of whatever was making the noise. Unfortunately, we saw nothing. Both of us are truly on edge at this point. We kept thinking about what it could be. We both went through our knowledge of animals in the area to try to explain it, but nothing came to mind to fit the sound of the footsteps we heard. At about midnight, the moon was straight overhead. Suddenly, we see a silhouette in the trees on the farthest side. I was astounded by what I was seeing. To this day, I cannot forget it. The being stood bipedal at about 8 foot tall, built like a brick shithouse, just standing and watching us with glowing yellow eyes. I quickly pointed out to my partner where I saw it, and he could tell I was totally freaked. As he followed where I was pointing, the creature began moving faster than anything I've ever seen, especially for its size. As we both tried to keep eyes on it, we could tell it walked with a slight limp and a hunched stance, suggesting this thing, if it ever stood completely straight, would be taller than I thought. At one point, my partner tried to venture closer, thinking he could get a better look at it, to which I advised against, since we did not know what we were dealing with. As he tried to get closer, the creature backed further into the thicket and started snarling and growling, a warning to back off. At this time, I told him to back the fuck up before he pisses it off. After about 5 minutes of watching it, but not being allowed to get closer, my partner slowly returned to where I was posted and told me the only thing he could tell was that it was definitely huge, heavily built, fast, and very aggressive. Kinda looks like a wolf, he said. I looked at him and asked if he was seriously suggesting we were seeing a damn werewolf. We both knew it could be the only thing to explain it. Later, once the thing had left for that moment, we quickly tried to find some kind of evidence of what this thing might be. In many Native American cultures, there exists a Wendigo or a werewolf, usually based on stories of those who had done wrong to a sacred area and were cursed to roam as a bloodthirsty beast for the rest of their days. After searching headstones, we came across one that I could recognize. The name was definitely a Native American name. I told my partner to search that area for more headstones that might have similar names. And sure enough, we found the area was a small plot of Native Americans who had died in the 1800s. My skin was cold as ice, and I could barely move as I realized this cemetery was sacred Indian ground, and those that were desecrating it had no idea what they were doing. The rest of the night we were on edge, realizing that what we were seeing may have likely been the manifestation of the spirits protecting the cemetery. I'm not one to easily dismiss what I see so lightly, but I've also questioned the idea of werewolves or wendigos truly existing. This night, I swear to you, I know what I saw, and this creature definitely was real. I worked at the site for another 3 months, and was able to help catch the people that were desecrating the cemetery. Before they were taken into custody, I told them that they had desecrated sacred Indian land, and that if I were them, I'd be begging for forgiveness from the spirits. Otherwise, they won't like the consequences coming their way. The last night, the creature made itself known, but the air wasn't dark and heavy with malevolence on this night. It was rather light and relaxing, almost like the spirits were thanking us for finding the wrongdoers and for showing respect and honor to the site. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. Thank you to the people who submitted these stories. I enjoyed doing them, and I'm excited that this was the start of the viewer submission series. Send your true story or creepypasta to the address in the description. I also want to be serious for a minute and say that you guys are free to be negative and attack me in the comments, but please don't attack other viewers. I think it was R.P. McMurphy who said, "A fool thinks himself to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be John C." Be good to animals, even John C. Twice. Be good to animals, even people. See ya.
Ja, snämar, Bergsbus, Rish.
Hold on. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Shh. Shh. Be quiet. Shh. Be quiet. It's okay. It's okay. Be quiet now.